Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Lindsey series. This is the biggest district in Lincolnshire, containing 188 civil parishes. Without further ado, here's today's offering. Welcome back to East Lindsey again, everybody. Now, this next run of parishes in this Lincolnshire district will show you just how rural this county can be. I've got a nice run of 6 of them, and all of them will probably take me less than an hour. In fact, some of them might even take me as little as 10 minutes. This is the biggest of the 6, and it has just basically 2 roads. One of them is the A158, which you might be able to hear in the background because it's right there. The other one is the road I'm currently standing on, which is like a back lane that makes a loop around the village and comes back onto the A158 further up. This is Langton by Wragby. The East Lindsey series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Langton by Wragby, Long Village by Wraggi's Farmstead. East Lindsey might be full of tiny villages, but every now and then one of these specks on the Lincolnshire landscape throws a lot at you. That's certainly the case with today's offering. Welcome to Langton by Wragby, a village with a history that belies its meagre size. As its name suggests, it's near Wragby and lies 1 mile south of that much larger village on the A158. That's the main thoroughfare, but most of the village is situated upon Church Lane, which has the majority of the interesting stuff. Among the things of note here is the moated Manor House, where in the 13th century a former Archbishop of Canterbury was born. 800 years ago, Stephen Langton, the son of Henry, was the man who would seal one of the most important documents in British history, the Magna Carta. The Langton Trail was devised to celebrate the 800th anniversary of this event in 2015, and it begins in Langton by Wragby and runs all the way to Lincoln, where an original copy of the charter is held. This otherwise innocuous little village doesn't get a lot of attention. Most people pass through it on the A158, totally unaware of its importance. This video will aim to right that wrong. Come with me around an East Lindsey village with loads more than meets the eye. We start our short journey around Langton by Wragby at Rising Sun Farm on the A158. It's a house now, but it used to be a pub. More accurately, it was a beer house which was turned into a farmhouse upon closure. It was still offering ale in 1872 though. Records show it was run by a landlady named Mary Fairweather. There are no pubs, shops or retail facilities in the village these days. Most people who visit Langton never stop. Instead, most traffic just sails on through using the A158 to get between Horncastle and Lincoln. The road is, after all, the main route to Skegness. The number of houses in the village is very low. I would estimate Langton has no more than about 30, and that's being generous. What few there are have to contend with traffic noise, but this is more than made up for by the views across the local landscape. This is looking northwest towards Wragby. Size doesn't matter when you're on a major road. Langton benefits from this in terms of a bus service. The 56 Interconnect service calls here en route from Lincoln to Horncastle. That bus stop has the name Letterbox in reference to this freestanding box next to it. Langton sits on top of a soil that's characterised by clay. Grassland, as meadow and pasture, were abundant in medieval times on a clay soil. This field here is full of earthworks which indicate the land management practices which may have taken place centuries ago. The corduroy-like texture of the landscape is typical of ridge and furrow cultivation. Farming is still the biggest employer in the area. Langton is surrounded by rich arable farmland that's been worked for centuries, which continues to this very day. We've reached a junction, the only one on this route. So for the most part today, traffic noise is not something I'm going to be hearing a lot of, because all these villages in this run are so well out of the way and into the countryside, away from the main busy road. It's just a non-event really. And Langton by Wragby is actually like that itself. Most of it is laid out along this one road, Church Lane, which forms a loop around and back to where we started. All the main sort of landmarks and features are on this one main road. So let's walk down it and see what it's got. The first thing that catches your eye along Church Lane is this information board, which gives you quite a detailed history of the village. It has a lot for such a small place. This delves into the origins of the name Langton by Wragby. Langton means long farmstead, and it's by Wragby to distinguish it from the two other Langtons in East Lindsey. The board goes on to talk more about the field of earthworks we saw a moment ago and how it may be hiding some underground archaeology. Here's the field again from this side. As far as I know, these earthworks have never been explored further. This is the Manor House, probably the most important building in the village historically speaking. Although the house you see today is fairly modern, 19th century in fact, the site is thought to be medieval in origin. In fact, the water you can see here isn't a pond. That's the original moat that surrounded the house several centuries ago. If you head around the corner, you pass some farm buildings. These belong to Manor Farm, which would have originally been associated with the house. The house has 6 bedrooms and was last on the market for almost £800,000. Pricey. Now we come to the church, which is dedicated to St Giles. This is of 14th century origin, and the oldest part is the impressive perpendicular tower. A church of some kind is likely to have stood on this site since medieval times. In fact, the first recorded incumbent was noted in 1215. St Giles is a mixture of Victorian and medieval styles. It was rebuilt in 1866 and it's a Grade 2 listed building today. The stained glass in the east window depicts the birth, death and resurrection of Christ, whilst a second window depicts Stephen Langton, the village's most famous son. Now, believe it or not, even though this church is in the middle of nowhere effectively, this one gets quite a lot of attention from all over the world. A lot of people come to visit this place because of its links to the Magna Carta. Now, we have mentioned that famous document in a few episodes previously, but we've never actually really talked about it. So, for the benefit of those who don't know what the Magna Carta is, here's a little bit of information about it and its links to this very church. Stephen Langton, who was born in the original moated manor house west of the church, went on to be the Archbishop of Canterbury from 1207 until 1228. He was instrumental in the sealing of one of the most famous documents in British history, the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta's full title is Magna Carta Libertatum, a Latin term which means Great Charter of Freedoms. It was a royal charter of rights agreed to by King John of England at Runnymede, near Windsor, on the 15th of June 1215. Its first draft was overseen by Stephen Langton to make peace between the unpopular king and a group of rebel barons. It promised the protection of church rights, protection for the barons from illegal imprisonment, access to swift and impartial justice, and limitations on feudal payments to the crown. Neither side stood by their commitments, and the charter was annulled by Pope Innocent III, leading to the First Barons' War, which is a whole other story. Langton was sympathetic to the rebel barons' cause and met with them in 1213 and 14 and was able to influence many clauses in the document. At Runnymede, Langton was in attendance as one of the king's commissioners, along with Hugh of Wells, who he'd consecrated as Bishop of Lincoln in 1209. He witnessed King John seal the Magna Carta. Copies were made to be sent across the land, including one inscribed Lincolnia. This copy still remains in Lincoln today, and it's housed in Lincoln Castle. Near the castle is the Magna Carta pub, which takes its name from that very document. In 2015, to celebrate the 800th anniversary of the document's sealing, a 16.5-mile trail, dubbed the Stephen Langton Trail, was created to honour Lincolnshire's connections to the Magna Carta. Taking in the meandering and picturesque countryside, the trail is seen as a chance to walk in the footsteps of those involved in its signing and to see the document for yourself, because it ends at Lincoln Castle. Beyond the church, the road becomes a little less important in the grand scheme of things, but it's still a lovely walk. These gates belong to Langton Court, which is the former vicarage. It was built in the middle of the 18th century and has some 19th century additions. Like the church, it's Grade 2 listed. The weather made it possible for a few good countryside shots here and there. I particularly like this view looking back towards the church and Langton Court under the low hanging branches of the trees. Housing-wise, it's now sporadic, with isolated properties dotted along this narrow lane. These trees greet you at Porritt's Farm, which is among the oldest properties in Langton. It's not a listed building though. Only St Giles's Church and Langton Court are listed buildings here, which is surprising given the history of the Manor House. I don't make the rules though. As I continued eastwards, there were some signs of spring on the grass verges. Check out these lovely daffodils, making the place look very desirable. Not that it isn't already, of course. I mean, a glance in any direction at this point reveals a big sky and the lush green landscapes of Lincolnshire. Okay, we're virtually back to the start. Rising Sun Farm is just behind the camera, which means we've completed the little loop around Langton by Wragby. If that was the biggest one in this run, then what are the other ones going to be like? They're going to be absolutely minuscule, aren't they? We haven't quite finished with this one just yet though, because Langton by Wragby's boundaries also include several other little hamlets. We're going to take a drive through a couple of them now towards something called Gosling's Corner. Southeast of the village there are two hamlets, Low Langton and Langton Hill, which both have about 4 or 5 houses each. They're not exactly urban metropolises. There is a third hamlet called Strawberry too within the boundaries, which is to the northeast of the village off the A158. It's a similar story there. However, we're driving through Low Langton and Langton Hill in order to reach a wood. Gosling's Corner is one of the smaller Lincolnshire oak and lime woods, but it serves as an excellent representation of these distinctive and nationally important woodlands. It contains scattered oak standards over a coppice of small-leaved lime, oak, hazel, birch and field maple. The ground flora is impressively rich with abundant spring flowers at this time of year, and the rarer woodland plants within it include greater butterfly and bird's nest orchids. Birds living within the wood include the great spotted woodpecker, the tree creeper, the blackcap and other woodland warblers. Upon my arrival at Gosling's Corner, the plan was to park the car in the small space that's provided and walk into the wood for a short way to explore it. However, given the recent rainfall, that plan had to be abandoned. As you can see, the car park is a patch of grass, and when it rains, parking here is not a good idea. So the problem is not so much my footwear, because I do have my boots as always, and I could definitely walk through that without a problem. The trouble is there's nowhere to park my car otherwise, and I don't want to get stuck in the mud. So I'm going to have to move away from this, unfortunately. Never mind. And folks, that's it for Langton by Wragby, a parish that just goes to show that stopping to explore the smaller places in this country is well worth the effort. Next week we're off to a similar one size-wise. Let's see what untold secrets that one holds within its boundaries. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.